Hey, listen, today we're talking about coffee filters. What should you use here on Bean Basics? Oh, hey there. Welcome to Bean Basics with Bob and Michelle. Welcome to sunny Saugatuck, and welcome to our home and kitchen. Hey, listen, today we're talking about coffee filters. And right now in front of me, I've got two kinds, a craft coffee filter and a white coffee filter. And there's pros and cons to both. It's taste versus ecology, and that's what we have to know. But in order to sort of verify that paper contributes to the taste of your coffee, I'm going to actually cup them. And so to cup them, first, of course, I have to cut them into this glass, and I'm just taking two filters right off the gate, cutting them up. There's our craft. There's our white. And I'm going to give them a good soak with some hot water, same temperature as we would use for coffee, and let those sit for about 2 minutes. And then I'm going to cup them and give you my opinion. So that's the taste that we're going to do there. But the ecology goes like this. Paper filters in general take a lot of water environmentally to produce. So both white and natural take a lot of water. But the sort of downstroke of the white is that the white also uses a little bit of chemical. It might use bleach. Sometimes they do it with oxygen. But it is known that white coffee filters taste better than the natural. And I'm going to verify that for you right now. So I'm going to go in and, well, this white paper, there is a flavor. It's distinctive, slightly bitter, maybe tastes a little bit like rice. And right after that bitterness comes just a tad of sweetness. And here's the craft. Now that is like drinking a cardboard box, right? So there's distinctively a difference. And so from a taste perspective, the white would definitely be better. From an environmental perspective, the craft would be better. I think this is going to have to be a choice that you make. Now, when we produce coffee in a pour over or even in a drip, what we'd like to do in order to get rid of either of those flavor profiles is to wet the paper down or rinse it. And typically, I don't know if you can see these little ridges here on this paper. On the craft, it's 2 ridges. But where that's crimped together, typically we fold that. And we do that so that there's some rigidity to the paper when we put it in before we put the coffee and the water in. So that just gives it a little stance. Now I'm going to put this on a scale because the other thing that's sort of important, am I on? Mm-hmm. Okay, and I'm going to tear that out. Tell me if it's 0.
You are 0.
Okay, great. So come in close so you can see that I'm going to thoroughly wet this down. And I'm interested in the paper going flush to the wall. Now, pre-wetting, there you go, pre-wetting filters does 2 things. It takes away some of that paper flavor, that initial paper flavor. But the other thing, it might, what's my number there now?
106.6 grams.
Okay, this is going to be important. Now, the other advantage, of course, is it preheats the funnel and it preheats the glass you're to go into, so there's no thermal loss when you actually do brew the coffee. But here's the thing that I wanted to note. What's our number now? How many grams?
4 grams.
Okay, 4 grams. So what's important here is the paper does absorb some water. And so if you're being very careful about your coffee to water ratio, so for example, if we were just doing a single cup, we might use about 15 grams of coffee and about 250 milliliters, that's also 250 grams of water. If we were to not pre-wet the paper would take up some of that 250 grams. In this case, we'd be left with just 146, right? So that's why we want to pre-wet, get rid of the flavor, and let some of the water absorb into the filter itself, so we have no loss of ratio. I do want to talk about a couple of other filter options out there. One, and this is not a serious one, this is actually a souvenir from the El Recreo estate. That's one of our farm direct coffees that we're very proud of in Nicaragua. But it's very common in South America to use a cloth filter. And cloth filter would be good on taste, and it would be good ecologically. But the real issue with a cloth filter is you can almost never really get it clean, right? You don't really want to use detergents on it. So when you were done with it, you would want to give it a good rinse and put it to the side. Except if you put it to the side, it might actually get moldy. And the best recommendation for a cloth filter is to give it a good rinse, put it in a glass of water, and put that in the fridge. And wait for the next day. But holy cow, is that a lot of work, right? So if you're really, really strong on ecology and you want a great tasting coffee, you could use the cloth method. Well, I've tried to figure out other methods that are ecologically sound. And one that I've tried is something called, actually I'm going to have you come in a little bit closer. This is a ceramic filter. But for me, I've never been able to get a ceramic filter to work quite right. In other words, it's never a good flow rate. When I pour water in, if you'll come in, you'll see it starts backing up right away into the top here. And once I put coffee in, the little micro holes in this ceramic filter, see how slow it's moving out? It's so slow. But if I put coffee in there, it even moves slower. It actually just, the whole thing dams up. And even when I loosen my grind, I can't quite get it right on ceramic. And then with ceramic, I'm always a little concerned about getting it properly cleaned too, because there are so many micro holes in here. I'm not convinced, sort of like with the cloth filter, that we're getting it completely clean. If you've been watching, you know that we like to use a metal filter, and that has some very fine holes in it. The preferred brand that I like to use on that is Kone. This one's quite old, but super great brand. I've tried a lot of metal filters, and this one I believe works the best. I would remind everybody that even though we don't have to worry about rinsing from a flavor perspective like the paper, I do like to still give everything a little dose of hot water. And the reason to do that, again, is to retain that thermal mass so that when we add water later, this metal isn't stealing the heat away from the water and we lower the temperature. And that as the coffee drops into the bottom of the bowl of the Chemex, that the bowl is already heated and it too is not stealing heat from the coffee. So it just keeps everything at a better and proper temperature. Now, there is a disadvantage to the metal filter, and there's two. And they're both kind of aesthetic, kind of flavor. So one is paper filters, ceramic filters, cloth filters do a good job of taking the oils out of the coffee too. Now, oils, some say they like them, some say they don't from a flavor profile. But when you use a metal filter, you'll literally leave a oil slick on the top of your coffee. And I don't know if you can see that oil slick, but there's definitely an oil slick. So it looks like you know, a tanker burst in the ocean and released a bunch of oil. When taking that oil out, it tends, you know, when you use a paper filter, when you take the oil out, it gives it a cleaner cup, the oils left in the coffee give it a little bit of a heavy taste. Now the other disadvantage is with the metal filter is that you'll be left with coffee fines on the bottom. So it's not quite like drinking Turkish coffee, but you definitely don't want to take that last swig really hard, or if you do, I think you might need to brush your teeth right away, you know. Well, in the end, the question is, what is the right thing to do? And the right thing to do is what you think is right. Okay, so you've heard the pros and the cons of all the different filters: metal, ceramic, cloth, all ecologically friendly. And hopefully, you know, when we're discarding grounds or we're discarding paper, we go ahead and take that to the yard waste bucket, right? So whether you're composting or you're having it taken away and you have a yard waste bucket, the filters are paper, the coffee is all organic material, and we don't have to put that in the landfill, right? So from an ecological perspective, metal, cloth, ceramic. From a flavor perspective, my two preferences are the metal filter, and you know, Michelle likes the metal filter a little bit more than I do, and the white paper. So this one's a little more ecologically friendly than this one. This will give you a beautiful tasting cup of coffee. Well, that's about all the time that we have. But before we go, I do want to leave you with this one message. And that is, if you love the world will love you right back.
Hey, thanks for joining us. For future episodes, click the subscribe button. Bean Basics is brought to you by OneBigIslandInspace.com with 2 G's.